Alrighty, let's move on. We now have Earth. So I'm going to try something a little new with these, by the way. Someone recommended in my last video that I try to put like a number value to cards. I'm going to go like between 1 and 5. So let's see how this goes. This is Arcosodora. So it's a 3-cost backup standard unit, category 14. When it enters the field, choose it all forward. If your opponent doesn't play 3, break it. So this is kind of something they lean into. We're adding these tax effects to cards. Notably, if your opponent has no ability to pay the 3, this does break a dull forward for 3, which is above average. There's like a world where this is good. Unfortunately, like if they do pay the 3, then you get a free backup. But if it's worth them paying the 3, they will. And anything that gives your opponent the choice generally is worse than its card text, and Arcosodora is the same way. If you play this and your opponent just has a terrible forward they're okay with letting die, they'll do it, right? If you play this and they have the most important forward, they will pay it, and you just sort of get a free backup in the trade, which usually isn't good enough, right? So I think this card is like, it's not unplayably bad, so I'll give it like a 2, because it is above rate for what it does. It's not horrible, but I don't expect to see it getting any constructed play. Antlion, this is our monster hero, category 4. Always really nice to see Earth category 4 cards. When backup enters your field or backup you control leaves the field until the end of the turn, it becomes a forward with 9,000 power. Then when it's dealt damage, you do the same amount to another forward. So kind of like a weird hybrid of like Dataluma, but better in a way. I mean, it's like Dataluma only pinged for its own ping. The weird problem with this card is it's really hard to animate. So generally if you play this, you want to be playing this off of backups probably. So you have 2 backups down, at which point you can only animate it 3 times by playing backups. At which point you then have to start breaking your own backups, and like, it's good if you can do that, but it gets very expensive. If like for some reason you wanted to animate this thing for a lot of turns, it's not going to be able to continuously happen. And even more so than that, it's very hard to do this on your opponent's turn, because you're really only going to be able to break your backups to do it. I think this card is okay, but I'm not really a fan. I don't really see this slotting in, just because the activation condition is so difficult. It's probably about a 2 out of 5, I would say. Maybe 2.5. There's really good text. It's just so hard to actually use. Ignis. This is one of my favorite cards of the set, actually. So, category 15. Forward Job Retainer. That's very important, actually, due to Noctis. When Ignis enters the field, you can put a backup you control into the break zone. When you do so, choose a forward, break it. So, it's expensive removal. You know, we're paying 5 for the Ignis, and we're breaking it forward, but breaking it back. But we have another effect here, which is that when a backup you control is put from the field to the break zone, you get to add a forward to your hand. Only triggered during your turn and only once per turn. This is really cool. So essentially that turns Ignis into 5 CP, trade a backup for the best forward in your break zone, and break a forward. I think this is incredible. This is really good in retainers. They're playing cards like, there's a fair number of cards you can easily sack off. There's cards you can sack for value. You can run the new Prompto to draw a card. All of those are really good. You also get the forward recursion, which is actually really nice. And then if you have other ways of proccing your own things, Ignis can get kind of out of hand quickly. The only downside of this card is that, like, if you're trying to get lots of forwards back and breaking a backup every turn, you start burning through your backups, and then you kind of run yourself out of gas. It's not a reason not to run the card. I think it will definitely have a place. I think even something like Ice Earth could really like Ignis, where he would pair very well with your Roble as an additional forward break. Ice Earth tends to run 18, 17 backups. Breaking one is not a big deal. It likes to run Crystal Gen backups, which both are bad and are breakable, so you can get a forward back anytime. Forward Recursion in Ice Earth is great because of how powerful Physalis Special is. It's just a good all-around utility card. Just does a little bit of everything. This is like a 4 out of 5 card for me. Like, do I know how much play it's going to see? It's probably a card that's going to be left like as a one of in a couple lists, and get cut from a lot of others. But this is like the 52nd card in a lot of decks right now. And there's a very decent chance that like eventually someone kind of slides it down there a little bit and does well with it. Which, considering it's just a rare, you love to see that. Falna. So this is a 2 CP backup, Job Ancient, category 7. Look how adorable this art is, by the way. Holy cow. So X and tap, put Falna into the break zone, choose an Earth forward in your break zone if its cost is X, play it onto the field. So this card is, I think, very good, first of all. But it's good with very specific situations. So one thing you have to realize when you talk about this card is that there's something similar already exists. In Earth White Mage from Opus 12. White Mage here says tap, put it into the break zone, choose an Earth forward of cost 4 or less, play it onto the field. This is cheaper for anything that costs 3 or 4 technically. However, there's a big difference between a 2 CP backup that you can cash out later for value and a 4 CP upfront backup that doesn't do anything on entry. And I think for that alone, Falna probably is just better than White Mage. The ability to choose when you want to fire this is more impactful than a slightly better rate of return. So I think this card is really good. I think it's probably a decent one of in most Earth lists. It's breakable at any time. And you need some number of backups in your deck anyway. And some number of 2 CP backups is better than most. So next we have Aerith. This is probably the intended target for Falna. So, Job Ancient, Cat 7, Dissidia Final Fantasy, 2 CP 5k. When she enters the field due to a summoner ability, choose a forward in your break zone, add it to your hand. This is a really cool card, actually. So, admittedly, it's competing a lot for space with other cards. Most notably, the Emperor has a very similar effect when it's played due to an ability. And it's generic, so you get like a 1 CP discount on Aerith, but Emperor has a 9k body. And the warp is generic. So the only reason you want it to run Aerith is as an extra Fenrir target, I imagine. The ability to cheat her in with a summon is actually kind of relevant. So Phoenix, if you're on like an Earth Fire deck, could use her to recur a forward, or more likely she's the 3rd best Fenrir target. Maybe 4th. Tama's really good too. Behind Sarah, Sophie, and Tama. I don't think this is stunning. This is like a 2.5 out of 5. Like, it would be fine in the right deck. I just don't see really making room to slot this. Ifalna's like a 3.5. Chaos. So this is a really interesting card. So it's a 6 CP forward job Chaos, category 1 to City Final Fantasy. When Chaos enters the field, search for a dark forward of cost 4 or less, play it onto the field. So you kind of get to put 2 forwards on the field, and dark forwards tend to be very good. So all of that text is great. And then 2 earth, remove Chaos and 2 dark characters in the break zone from the game to break a forward, only on your turn. So the slightly awkward thing is, how many dark forwards do we really want to run with Chaos, right? So let's go real quick. We're going to look at all of the dark forwards of cost 4 or less. So right here, Emperor is actually a decent option. We of course have Kadaj. I like the idea of using this to tutor Sephiroth out, so you could run like 2 copies of this and 1 copy of Sephiroth in like an Ice Earth deck. And then when Sephiroth is good, you can tutor the Sephiroth out of the deck. You can get Spiritus to tag into any other Dark Forward if you wanted to. I imagine Xenos is a pretty choice option as well. Ultimately, I think this is probably getting either the Emperor or Kadaj. I've seen some arguments that you could run 2 copies of this and 1 copy of Kadaj just to make it like more likely you see your Kadaj without running 2 Kadaj. I don't hate that idea. I really feel like you probably need to be willing to run 2 Dark Forwards to get the value out of this. I mean, you could always go like this into Spiritus into something else, but then you're getting like very low value out of the Chaos entry trigger. So I almost wonder if like the Venera is the right one to go with, just given the smaller body. You're kind of more okay with running multiples of Venera. Xenos is like nice but not an amazing partner because he removes himself from the game on his 2nd cast, which would lose the trigger. Soul is better than he looks. Ultimecia actually was kind of disappointing. So it's interesting. I don't know how much play this will see, but if we see like a really good low-cost Dark Forward, we might actually start seeing this start getting a lot of play. Leatherworker is part of the cycle of Chaos is about a 3. Good card, very specific, don't know what plays it. Yeah, Leatherworker, standard unit, category 14 backup. If you control 3 or more, it's free. Earth is an element that has been dying for a way to consistently get 5 Earth backups on the field. Thanks to cards like Riku and Genova Synthesis, this card helps that by a lot. There's no engine you want to run right now. So you're running like Sid Garland, the new Miner, all of these cards that like are good, but not ones you want to be running long term, right? For that reason, I think Leatherworker is maybe the best of this cycle. I'm going to give this about a 3.5 out of 5. Ciaran. So Ciaran's a 3 cost, category FFCC, 7k. Actually quite a decent card. When he enters the field or attacks, you gain a crystal, so he gets to enter and generate 1, and then generate 1 the more he sticks around, which is great. Earth really doesn't want to play a Geomancer backup. This is maybe a way that you just don't have to do that. You get the ability to pay 1 crystal to gain 2,000 power until the end of the turn. So Ciaran enters and attacks, you have 2 crystals to spend. Cash him out as a 10k on his first attack, or 11k. Makes him hard to block. And then special Dark Sword. Once you get to about damage 3, 3k for every point of damage you received. This is a card that I think is more interesting and better than he initially reads. I think that there's like a world where like an Earth Water Crystal deck running like Roble and Glaciella is good. And in that deck, this card probably is not the worst 3 of you could run as like instead of like a Gao slot, right? So I'm going to give it a 3. Might be a little high, but Gigas. 1-drop monster, job giant, category FFCC. When Gigas enters the field, choose a forward. It cannot attack or block. It's pretty low impact. It does stop it for until the end of your opponent's turn, so if you want to really stop one big attacker, you can. And then for double Earth and 1, you can sack it to do 8k to a forward. This puts it at about on rate with Fire Ping. There's no conditions. It's okay. You can do worse, especially like if you're really looking for a Mira target to revive off of 1 damage, but Earth just probably has better monsters than this at this point. It's like a 2. It's not unplayable, but not very good. Kimari. This is a Job Guardian, 8,000 power. 0 cost action ability. Choose a forward. You control the Kimari during this turn. Next damage dealt to it is dealt to Kimari instead. And you can discard an Earth card to make the next damage dealt to him reduced by 8k instead. This card is trash. This card is not good in the slightest. 1 out of 5. This card should never see the inside of a sleeve outside of draft or sealed. Or limited. Sorry, that's the term. Minor. This card is really good. So it enters the field, reveal the top 5 cards of your deck. Add a backup to your hand. Any backup. Earth decks tend to run large numbers of backups due to the control package they run. Earth has no consistent backup engine. This may be a 3 of in any mono Earth deck, to be honest. And then for 2 in the tap, you can put it in the break zone to draw a card. So you can kind of cash it out for a draw later. It's just good. The only thing I have a question on, we're going to go ahead and check this out right now. If we have 49 cards, we're revealing 5. We can reveal up to 5 backups, right? What is our hit rate if we have 15 backups? 85%. If you get to 16 backups, like 88%, it's likely enough. I can't imagine you're going to miss the trigger very often. I think this is just really good. This is like a 4 out of 5 backup for me. It's not as good as another standard unit 14 backup, but still really good. Cecil. So this is Cecil. This is our first Earth Legend. It is a 5-cost Job Dark Knight, category 4, with 9,000 power. Let's get the least interesting part of the card out of the way. It has a special. The decks that play this are probably going to run 6-ish card named Cecil, so they wanted a way to kind of get them out of your hand. Earth +1 for 8k is above rate, but nothing crazy for a special. It's just solid. So first things first, you can pay Earth Water instead of paying the CP cost to cast Cecil. Notably, that says cast. That is really broken. If you do so, when Cecil enters the field, Cecil deals you a point of damage. Awesome. All of this is good text. Notably, that means that with the Rosa in this set, you can pay for Cecil by discarding any card from your hand. Probably the weirdest ruling I've ever seen in this game, by the way, is that if you have Tilica active, you can play Cecil by paying either Earth or Water. Just one of them if you're willing to take the damage. So we have this really big body that we can pay at a discounted rate as long as we have the 2 backups and wouldn't take the point of damage. Why would we want to do this? Well, we can sacrifice Cecil to tag into a Paladin and play it onto the field. I have wanted this card since about Opus 16. I wanted a Dark Knight Cecil that gave you... I wanted it to be the Light and Dark card where you like played Dark Cecil and then you would tag into Light Cecil. And then like vice versa. But this is really close. But you can search for a job named Cecil with Job Paladin and play it onto the field. There are a lot of good Paladin Cecils. And all of them get better when they cost 2 and can be played from the deck at instant speed. So let's go... see what our targets are. A magnet is not bad. 5 CP, 8k. All forwards not taking damage from summons or abilities. As the Opus 2 legend is really good. The Starter Cecil's really good. The new Cecil in Water is actually quite good. And then, of course, we have the Wind Cecil that is probably going to be the most common target. Gives your whole field a little bit of protection and allows you to play a forward from your hand onto the field, or a card from your hand on the field. It costs 4 or less. So you kind of get like this massive CP refund, right? You pay 2 for Cecil, and then tag Cecil out for a 5 CP forward from the deck that then proceeds to play a 4 cost from hand. This card is ludicrously good. I think this is maybe the best single card in the set, to be honest. No questions asked, 5 out of 5 card. This will see a ton of play. This is a card that Rydia was begging for, too. So Rydia is going to come back. There's going to be so many interesting Category 4 decks just as a result of the sheer amount of power packed into a single card. And it's all possible because of just this Earth Cecil. So, super cool card. Sonin. This is a common. Wow, I didn't realize that. 4-drop. Category 7, 8,000 power. If you have a Melfi, gains 1,000 power and Brave. The Melfi is in your break zone. For limited, the 4 CP 9k Brave is actually not bad. It actually likes this action ability quite a bit. You can remove Sonin and the Melfi in your break zone from the game to draw a card. Do I think this is going to make the cut in any competitive Earth-Wind lists? Probably not. But I like the flavor. I think it's a decent enough card. I could see this like working in a low power environment. Probably like Sonin Melfi with like Yuri Chelinka is a really strong draft archetype. So I would give this like about a 2. It's fine. It's unspectacular, but a lot better than it had to be. This is a weird one. So this is our other Earth legend. This is Tifa. So she costs 1 9 CP. How can that be? Well, when she enters the field, you discard 2 cards. So she has Brave. She cannot become dull by your opponent's summons or abilities. These are all really good text. And then you can pay 2, and Tifa can attack once more this turn. You can only pay with CP by backups to use the ability. Notably, that is not once per turn. It says attack once more, not attack a second time. So if you have the ability to just keep doing this, you can just keep going. How good is it? I don't know. This is a really hard card to evaluate. So, obviously, if you have Tifa entered the field when you have 0 cards in hand, you have a 1 CP 9k. Brave can't become dull. That's incredible. But I don't ever like going to a 0 card hand intentionally. You're just telegraphing to your opponents that, hey, do whatever the heck you want. I can't do anything about it. And then, like, the action ability makes you think that you need to get backups down because you want to be able to do that. But if you're playing her off of backups, you're not emptying your hand to avoid the discard trigger. And you start to kind of go around in circles on this card. This isn't a ghoul card. This is not a card that I play very often. I think there's like a world where this is really good in like an Earth Wind mid-range. The most likely home for it is as a finisher in Avalanche. But even Avalanche doesn't like going to large quantities of backups a lot of the time, so like I don't know. Like you can go like for maybe a mid-range Avalanche, use Tifa as the finisher payload. Does that bring Avalanche back into the meta though? Is that good enough? It's like the card is strong, but I would rather it be like 3 CP discard 1 than 1 CP discard 2. Because then you could actually like try to preserve cards in hand. 1 CP discard 2 means that like when she comes down, you're going down to a 1 card hand at most. And I just would we ever pay 5 for this? I don't think so. And like the discard 2 cards is so much worse than if she costs 5 if we had the backups for the multi-attacker, right? So I'm gonna give this 3.5 stars. There's a world where I'm underrating this just because this really... When I read this the first time, I laughed and said, where's the lightning symbol on this card? It reads like the classic Timmy Lightning legend of, I'm going to attack 1,000,000 times and do all this really, really cool stuff on my elaborate combo for my card that hand loops me for 2 and sits there for a turn and does nothing while my opponent is ready to do whatever the heck they want for a turn. I can't get behind a card like this. So there's a lot of like infinite attack combos with this card and a lot of other interesting things, but I don't think this card is going to be consistently good enough to be worth the slot. I will give her a shot, but I don't expect to be wowed by her. Noctis. This is a really interesting card, actually. So category 15, 3 cost 7k. When he enters the field, you get to give a forward 2k plus Brave until the end of the turn. kind of okay. And then when Noctis is put from the field into the break zone, you can sacrifice a character. When you do so, Noctis plays himself onto the field dull, and he permanently gains 2,000 power. So he'll be a 9k for your sacrifice. So there's a lot of weird synergies. The most obvious one in this set is Ignis. You can play Ignis on turn 1, then play Noctis. When Noctis dies, sack off another backup. Ignis then recovers another backup for you while getting buffed. And life is good, right? There's also a really funny infinite you can do if you can get one Noctis in on top of the other. So like play Noctis, or Noctis dies on the trigger of putting a character you control into the break zone. You get a second Noctis into play with, say, an Ifalna. And you kind of just start going around and around on it. Do I like the card enough as is? I don't know. Again, the text is fine. The biggest problem is that the Noctis starter is actually just a really good card. And I don't think this replaces that. So this needs a new deck it wants to go in. I think this is like a 3.5. There's a world where this is really good in some decks, and some decks in the future, but I think for now it's going to get kind of squeezed out by other cards. Really neat effect, though. Very happy to see this card. Geomancer, all I'm going to say is this is my least favorite of these backups, partly because it's the most used, and also because it's the most boring. This card has no text. Still mad they reprinted these. Fake. This is a weird card. 2CP, 10k, category FFL with Brave. If he has one or less time counters, he cannot attack or block. Ooh. When you receive a point of damage, put a time counter on Fake. Yeah. So you have to like put 2CP into this card while he's on field. Let your opponent smack you twice, and then he becomes a 10k Brave. I like the 10k Brave, but outright break and bounce are like everywhere nowadays. Even like Fire doesn't have too many issues getting him off the field. There's like a world where you like play this plus Porum, but like, come on, we're so past that with Porum at this point. And like, the goal with Porum isn't to target your own guy; it's to target the opponents and try to disrupt their plays. I think this is like a 1. There's like a world where it's okay against 13, but just play Galuf. Play a card that doesn't allow 13 to smack you in the face twice before you get something out of the deal. Fenrir. Fenrir is a 1-cost 6 category 6 summon. So already very interesting. If Fenrir chooses a forward of cost 2 or less, the cost required to cast Fenrir is reduced by 1. If that doesn't put a giant flashing light around Rydia, then literally nothing ever will. So choose a forward. Against this forward cannot be chosen by your opponent's summons till the end of the turn. So it's really weird and really specific. Now, granted, 1 CP, cancel a summon, is really good, but not every deck is going to play summons, right? So how much stock do we put in protecting our cards from summons when we could do something like Titan and say can't be broken for 2 CP, right? And if you've got a Rydia on field anyway, Rydia can cast that for free. So the cost reduction doesn't even matter that much. Granted, this does protect against like mono water. If you think mono water is going to be really good, you can cancel Leviathans for free. I just think that it's a little bit too narrow. Because like the most common thing you want to protect with this is going to be a more expensive forward, which is going to cost 3. And if that's the case, then your opponent then did just rip the card in your hand, and you could have run Mist Dragon for 2 more, cancel the summon, and in exchange you also have a card with utility against every deck. I would get a playset of this just in case, like, you know you're going into a very mono water heavy format, but I don't think this is going to be a competitive staple anytime soon. Mira. So when Mira enters the field, reveal the top 5 cards of your deck, add a monster among them to your hand, return the cards to the bottom of your deck in any order. And sack her to choose a monster. It gains cannot be broken until the end of the turn. If this card had any other name, she would be incredible. But she has the worst possible name she can have. Twice over now. The 2CP Mira is still one of Earth's best cards in my opinion. And there's a new Mira that goes in any deck that I think is maybe one of the most interesting cards in the set. I think this Mira is really good, but she's going to get crowded out. Reveal 5, you have to be running. We just established with Minor, you'd have to have 15 monsters in your deck. Any deck on that many monsters is going to want to run the other Mira, one of the other Miras probably. So maybe you could run this in addition as a searcher that can sack itself for free, but I think you'd be more likely to run something like a Realm or something instead. Mega Sisters. This is the first boss in Endwalker, for anybody that doesn't know. And Mega Sisters cannot be chosen by summons. Okay. Forward opponent controls lose haste. Okay. Forward opponent controls cannot gain haste. Also good. Tap, discard a summon, choose a forward, deal at 8k. Also very good. I've seen some hype on this card as like the 13 killer. I don't think so. 13 does run a lot of summon-based removal, but it still should have cards like Vanille and Squall and Seymour. All these cards should be able to do that. And it doesn't do much that Galuf doesn't already do. And I feel like if that's the case, you're going to run the cards better in most matchups, which would be Galuf. This card isn't horrible. It's not unplayable. I just don't really see this being the best slot for its thing. I'm going to give it like a 2. I think this card is very interesting, but because it's a forward, very vulnerable, doesn't do anything, I think it's probably going to just kind of stay on the cutting room floor most of the time. Up next, we have Leo, FFCC Job King, which is interesting. It means it's so searchable with Sarah and with Claris, which is always good. FFCC forwards gain 1000 power. And when Leo enters the field, search for an FFCC forward of cost 4 and play it onto the field. So you have to have a forward you want to play, and if you do, and that forward is the right one for the time, then you just play a 2CP backup that's also an Anthem, which we've established is really good. So let's take a look real quick at the FFCC forwards. That are not named Cecil, because none of them are named Cecil. So getting a Mira out of the deck is really nice. I need exactly forwards. These Mira and CRN I don't think are the best pulls. You could go Yuri for a Yuri Chelinka of your choice, or vice versa. Beldat is interesting because if you're in Earth, you probably can be playing Tyro, at which point you can color fix anything you steal out of the deck, or out of their break zone. Scrolling down, break some monster. This Yuri is a really, really nice target. I would probably go all in and get like Chelinka and Yuri. Go like Chelinka, discard, get Yuri. So you end up with like a backup and 2 really big forwards on your field. But also this should be, so yeah, Crystal Chronicles. This is searchable off of Northstallen as well. So searchable with all of the 3 backup engines you'd want it to be with. Mira's a really interesting one to get. Chime allows you to get removal out of the deck, cheated into play. I don't think you're doing that very often. Galdez is well past its prime, and this Chelinka still actually is not a bad card, actually. As is this, or actually you can't play Leo with Leo. Overall, I think it's an interesting card. The better Crystal Chronicle forwards we get over time, the better this will be. If you get like a nice Lale in the future, I could see this really becoming an interesting card, but for now, it's just an interesting option. I'm going to give it about a 3.5. I think this could be good in the future. And that's it for Earth. Stay tuned for Lightning.